Welcome to Masters and Makers. I'm delighted to be joined today by Karen Sumner, CEO of Transparent Audio. Karen, thank you so much for doing this with me today.
Well, it's a pleasure. Absolutely.
How did you get involved in high-end audio in the first place, and how did you come to start Transparent?
Well, it wasn't really any too different than any other audiophile. I was an audiophile at an early age. I built a stereo with my dad and Heathkit. We made our own speakers, went to Radio Shack, got components, and Radio Shack was a real audio store back then.
Yes.
Built a turntable, did the whole rig, and I just started collecting records, and I just devoured everything in sight, from classical to pop to jazz to blues to Indian music to British invasion to folk music. I just loved it all, and I started playing piano at a young age and picked up guitar in my teens, and I really wanted this stereo so that I could listen to all kinds of music, and I would pick out arrangements and learn how to play arrangements that were made for other instruments on the guitar and sing, and it was my best friend. I mean, I'm basically like a lot of audiophiles, I'm a bit nerdy and we just like doing the things we like to do, and I loved listening to music and building the stereo, and had to learn how to repair it because I broke it all the time because I overused it. And my first hint that I was a real audiophile was when I started pestering the people at Radio Shack and kept on asking them about my stylus, and that is like the ultimate audiophile thing. So I was into music and into all different kinds of music, had a very nice stereo system, was technically astute. I'm not really a marketing person or terribly oriented to verbality or writing or anything like that. I'm really a doer and a builder and a visualizer and a creator. So I just took to it. And when I met my husband, he was of the same bent, and he had this phenomenal stereo system, and we just started business together and employed the cooperation of a good friend of ours who was of a similar bent, and we started this business back in 1981. Started to import amplifiers from Norway, of which I had a chance to use my ability to repair things often. And our partner said, Karen, I don't know, people might not take to it too kindly if they knew you repaired these things. So I went through 20 years in the industry without anybody really knowing that I know how to make stuff.
And how did you get into the wire business? How did you come to start Transparent itself?
Well, that's an interesting question, because at the time we were bringing this little amplifier in, audiophile cables started appearing on the market, and a lot of them were these complicated woven litz type
Mhm.
designs, coated wire, and they were highly reactive. And our little amplifier went from DC to daylight, had no protection anywhere, had no kind of network on the output to prevent it from going from DC to daylight, and it was fire in the hole basically. We hooked up this stuff to those sweet little amplifiers, and so we figured that cables actually made a difference.
Mhm.
And this was back in probably after we had done Electro Company Net for 3 or 4 years. I started talking to other people in the industry who had similar conditions and had similar requirements in terms of interface. And I ran into Rick Fryer and Bruce Brisson, and We hooked up some of the original music hose, which was bright purple, and some of the interconnects, and the amplifier settled down and it worked and it sounded really musical. And so we got very interested. We started experimenting, and we found out that even the little tiny piece of wire at the output stage of the amplifier, if it was replaced with something inferior, something other than what the company had originally determined met their sonic requirements, it sounded really awful, just 6 inches of wire.
Hmm.
And then I started talking to Robert Fulton, who is, he thought outside the box. He was involved in every aspect of audio, and he was really, really interesting guy. And he had some very specific ideas about cable. And one of the things he said was, well, my cable in a 15-foot length is ideal for my speakers and most amplifiers. And so I went, oh yeah, well, that's an interesting idea. So that, actually what needs to happen is equipment needs to have something hooked up to it that sort of complies with their output characteristics in order to send a signal the way we want to hear it as human beings on the other end. And so the rest is history,
Okay.
basically. And we got involved with MIT and represented them for quite a few years and manufactured their products. And as these things go, these relationships don't always work out to be lifelong relationships. They're not like the partnership I've had in our business with my husband and with our good friend Carl Smith. But, it was time he wanted to move on. And I said, okay, well, you should do what you want. And so we decided we would take a slightly, sort of a dramatically different approach to what we wanted as an end product when we started Transparent back in I think 94, 95.
Okay, very interesting history.
Yep.
When you wrote on What's Best that when you first got involved in the high-end audio hobby, your personal objective was to retrieve as accurately as possible all of the information encoded on the source material, and that over time, your personal high-end audio objective evolved to one of maximizing suspension of disbelief and to achieve a greater emotional connection to the musical performance. Why did your personal objective evolve and change over time?
Well, that's interesting because actually I don't think those concepts are mutually exclusive. And I have to say, the only reason I can say that I can sit down and listen and become totally emotionally involved is because I spent most of my adult life pursuing the idea of getting closer to the source. And as the last 30, 40 years have progressed, the industry has matured and the recording industry has matured, and there's just a lot more available for us all to listen to. And so the challenges became greater and greater as we went from decade to decade. We went from listening to turntables, maybe some of us had reel to reels, and then the dark ages of the digital age dawned upon us, and everybody told us it was perfect sound forever. And we were all running around with our hair on fire saying, I'm sorry, this is just not going to make it.
But
And
the
so
idea of
fortunately we progressed, and we are there now, and we have access to information and a degree of resolution we never had before. But
Mhm.
I would never have gotten to the point of being, releasing myself to the sound with a modern complex hi-fi system unless we had been true to what was on that original source material.
Mhm.
So
So I hear you to be saying that the technology evolved to the point where you didn't abandon the original objective, but the technology underlying the original objective allowed you to begin to develop a greater emotional connection to the music. Would that be correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the early days, I would say I'd rather listen to a good table radio than a hi-fi system
Well,
because I thought that it rendered music in a much more compelling, musical, tuneful way. And, our industry was really held back by digital in its infancy, and it's finally gotten to the point where um,
well,
we can have more than we've ever had before.
on that point, I know that you feel that, apropos of what you're suggesting, sometimes vintage systems from the 1950s and 60s can sound
Mhm.
musically superior and more emotionally engaging than some of today's contemporary systems. So, what do you think it was about those vintage systems that resonated with you in terms of believability?
Well, I think they resonate with a lot of people who've been in the business for a while because we've all had systems like that. And the issue is, and they're wonderful. And I would say that if that's what makes you happy, you should still listen to that because the path to getting the ultimate sound or the ultimate listening experience with today's equipment is it's not that easy to do. And it's a lot easier when you've got basically an analog source, which is forgiving, which creates um, even order distortions that are pleasing, and you can have everything kind of like really thick, delicious beef soup, and it's very soothing and it's very wonderful. And the problem is when you go away from that and you try to get to the ultimate of musicality, of involvement in the music, it's a difficult pathway. And I've seen many of your readers talk about that extensively and say, well, it's my own journey, and it is. And as long as you're having fun and you can enjoy it, have at it for decades. But it has taken basically my entire career, my husband's entire career, for everything to get up to the level where it can come together and you can hear it like you've never heard it before. And that magic is there. It's just not that easy to get. And you can't get it by going to audio swap meets. You can't get there because it's more complex than just a piece of equipment.
Will you believe that a focus on hi-fi attributes and concepts like clearly delineated sonic images and detail and crisp leading edge transients and slam and low noise floor and so-called black backgrounds, you think that a focus on those terms and concepts can lead us away from an authentic music reproduction experience? So why do you think Harry Pearson and others developed and cultivated that nomenclature?
Well, actually, Harry hasn't been around for a while, so it's easy to blame it on him. But the fact is, I knew him pretty well and spent a lot of time listening to him and listened to what he had to say and listening to his system and actually listening to live music with him. And he wasn't a technical guy. It was all emotion to him, and he was a very talented writer, and he was very knowledgeable and passionate about music and music reproduction, and he wrote about it better than anybody else did at the time, or anybody else really has since, although there are a few people who are approaching it. But basically, my issue with the review press in general, and I wish we had Harry back in many ways, because he brought heart. He brought heart to our industry. But um, I think that what happens is, words are cheap, and it's really kind of sad in a way that our industry, we're made up of a bunch of basically visual thinkers. We think outside the box, we're creative, we have ideas, we see things that regular people don't see, and we've kind of put our future in the hands of verbalists who write about stuff, and
But
they
why?
don't necessarily have the rig, they don't have the room, they don't have the experience with live music to talk about it on a level that it deserves to be discussed.
But
So,
those hi-fi attribute terms, the black backgrounds and the detail, what is it about the concepts underlying those terms? And if an audiophile wants to, if an audiophile sets those objectives for his or her system, what is it that you feel will result in that system possibly being not musically authentically engaging the way you believe a system should be? So how does that nomenclature take somebody into the wrong direction and lead them to a system which doesn't sound musically convincing?
well, it actually that's an interesting idea, but I think that the words, they're temporal.
Mm-hmm.
They're up here in the temporal lobe.
Mm-hmm.
They're not back here in the cortex or in your amygdala reptile brain. They're up here. And I just think that the words themselves have a tremendous pull, and people think they want those things when in
Mm-hmm.
fact, a lot of it doesn't actually happen in live music. And the only thing I would temper that with is the fact that no matter how hard you try or how wonderful your rig and your listening room and your record collection is, etc., you can't make it to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
All you can do is hope to suspend your disbelief that you're in a hi-fi.
I know that you believe that naturalness and tonal density in the 100 hertz to 1000 hertz range is critical for believability. So,
Mhm.
why do you think so many companies and their components focus on and celebrate the frequency extremes instead of that critical upper bass to lower mid range area where I think, and I know you think, a lot of the music magic really lives?
Well, that's one of the biggest challenges of putting together a great system, because most rooms, unless they've been purposefully designed to give us an accurate audio signal, they don't come anywhere near the ability to reproduce that foundation in a way that's convincing. I mean, you might be able to do it in a pleasurable way, but there's so much interaction with rooms that and the problem always occurs in rooms in that region, because that's what excites walls, ceilings, floors, windows. You got it. It's all excited by that region. And so I think that what a lot of people have done is, a lot of designers have done, is they've said, well, we got to go in this situation where this is going in a normal listening room and people want more frequency extremes. They want
Mhm.
dimension. They want these other qualities. And you basically can't achieve them all in normal construction. You basically can't do it.
Mhm.
So what they're doing is they're giving them um, say highly seasoned soup. It's got too much salt, or something's got too much sugar in it. It's giving people what they want. And obviously, if that's what they want, they should have it. But there are a large group of music lovers out there who love music, who don't want too much salt on their food. They want to have a balanced, natural musical sound. And the fact is that there have been studies done. Dr. Sandra Treehub of the University of Toronto did some seminal studies on the fact that infants as young as 6 months old can distinguish difference in notes, difference in dynamic range, difference in rhythm. They can tell when you're changing the tune. And everybody can do that regardless of their culture, regardless of socioeconomic conditions. So if everybody can do it, my attitude has always been, well, I think we should go for what everybody knows and loves. And this pursuit of this sort of magical black background with these pinpoint images and things. It's a thing unto itself, and it's fine if that's what you want, and you have found the 5 good records that sound good on your system and you're happy with that. But the problem is that systems, people who, it kind of limits your ability to play a wide variety of music at a believable level. And it prevents you from really appreciating what scale is as well as spatiality. So,
How do you think the industry, dealers, distributors, manufacturers, the reviewers, the magazines, can do a better job of teaching novice audiophiles how to go about selecting components and enable them to achieve satisfaction with their systems sooner rather than later and avoid a lot of unnecessary expensive box swapping along the way?
well, and that's been my primary concern. I mean, what we wanted to do from the beginning is to help people put together better systems so that they could listen to a greater variety of music and enjoy it and get lost in that experience. And um, the industry, it's like catch as catch can. There's this best thing, there's that best thing, and next month it's another best thing. And if you put this in your system, it's going to transform it. And those are the commonly held beliefs. And there's nothing out there to really guide people in any way to help them to understand what they should come to expect from what their listening environment is like, the kind of music they like, and how all their components work together. One of the things that we've done, and I will share something with you on the screen, and
Sure.
I think this paradigm, which I'm going to put up on the screen, is universal. You can apply it to our products if you like, and our products have been designed so that it helps our customers move step by step and improve their system over time without any backtracking or taking any side trips, and helping them achieve what is the ultimate for them given their means and circumstances and listening room. So I'm going to share something with you and I'll point out a couple of things about it.
Sure.
So, so what this is we call it our levels of musicality system builder, and we've pretty much taken systems from a basic system, an upgraded basic system, a better system, an upgraded better system, a premium system, an upgraded premium system, a connoisseur type system, and an upgraded connoisseur system, which is the ultimate that we can do today. And we're not done yet, but what we tell them is, the cables are the thing that it's throughout your system. It's really hard to avoid unless you're a Bluetooth speaker person, and then you're probably not a high-end person if that's what you're listening to. So, um, you know, we're at every step in the way, and so what we have is we have a family of products for each type of system you have. And this has helped our dealers and helped our customers to put together really satisfying speakers and amplifiers and have things more attuned to what their room can handle in terms of frequency response, and do it
Hmm.
in a fairly accurate and linear fashion. So this is what we've come up with. And if you go to our website, there are a lot of other tools that integrate with this chart, which shows this progression, which allows people to kind of get closer to the music every step of the way. So
Interesting.
yeah, so we've done that, and we have an upgrade program as well to go along with the levels of musicality. So when customers are ready to go up to the next level,
And,
they can
does that progression enable one to achieve your ideal equation of focusing on the 100 hertz to 1000 hertz range and not emphasize the frequency extremes of detail and black background and so on? So
yeah.
that progression is consistent with your preferred philosophy of helping people achieve a musically authentic experience?
Yes. Yes. And the reason is that what we're saying is we don't want to, you don't want to put more in a specific listening room than the room can handle.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so you may end up stopping somewhere around a premium system or an upgraded premium system and saying, well, I can't really build myself a purpose-built 25 by 35-foot room with 12-foot, 14-foot ceiling and massive walls and massive construction and make the thing totally rigid and massive so that sound can't move it, so that the room can't contribute to the sound. You may never get there, but and that's okay. And I think everybody should have that experience of getting there. I've been there for decades now, so I know what rooms like that can do, and I know what regular rooms can do. But part of the thing is getting the best out of what you have to work with.
One of the things, it's interesting, some of the things you're saying would suggest to me that you might have a vintage system yourself with an Altec multi-cell driver and front-loaded horn woofers and single-ended triode amplifiers, but in fact you have what you describe as a complex state-of-the-art mega system. Why
It
don't
is.
you have horns with SET amplifiers?
Well, I've been there and I've done that, but
huh?
anyway,
But you,
uh, yeah, go ahead.
no, but you feel that the mega system can achieve the tonal density in the 100 hertz to 1000 hertz range that you like from the vintage systems, but also give you more.
Yeah, that's it. But you have to have the room to do it. And my feeling is that, you can get away without having a purpose-built room if your room is large enough
Hmm.
and you can get speakers away from the boundaries and you do relatively near field listening. In other words, you get more direct sound off from the recording. That's a good approach. But the problem is most people have to deal with this stuff living in their homes. And
Right.
so it's difficult.
Do you think that musical genre preference drives loudspeaker preference? If a person is into jazz, a jazz aficionado, is there something about the way horn loudspeakers reproduce and propagate the sound of, say, brass instruments that's consonant with the way those brass instruments themselves make their sounds? Is there something about the oomph and impact of cones that might lead electronica and rock music aficionados to big dynamic driver systems?
Yeah, and I mean, you might find the ideal speaker system that interfaces with your room in a way that allows you to enjoy the music you love. But um, I would offer that it's more important to expand your musical horizons because the opportunities are so great today to do that with Qobuz and Tidal and room systems and the digital playback systems that are available with filtering that allow you to hear DSD well or DXD upsampling. And it's it's just one of those things where you can get a lot more. You can get tonal density and natural tonal balance, and you can get full dynamics, and you can get spatiality and scale and image focus with a modern system. And the current system I'm listening to is not all that complicated. I have a lot of nostalgia audio hanging around, but to be honest with you, I have a wonderful digital front end and it's connected directly to the amplifiers, which are connected directly to the speakers. And I have a big server with tens of thousands of selections on it, and
Well, I know you have the
I'm
Wilson.
happy.
I know you have the Wilson Whams. What amplifiers are you using these days?
Well, we have a number of them. Right now, I'm listening to the Momentums,
Hmm.
the D'Agostino Momentums, and we have for the digital front end, we have DCS in their latest
Hmm.
Apex upgrade.
I know you don't believe in the general audiophile concept of balancing the sounds of different components to offset their strengths and weaknesses. What's wrong with using, say, a softer sounding tube phonostage to mitigate the edginess of a moving coil cartridge?
Well, that's an interesting concept because, in fact, in reality, you can't get away with not doing that to some extent. But when that becomes your modus operandi, you have to keep in mind that you never get back what you lose. You can't recover stuff that's been covered up by other components. And when you're doing it by ear, it might be okay, it might not be okay. I don't know. But the fact is that you can't solve one problem by damping it out with what it amounts to another problem. So
Similarly, in a related topic, over damping a room, once you lose energy, you can't use components to get that energy back if it's been absorbed by acoustic treatment, for example.
that's right. And one of the biggest issues is, uh, you know, you you everybody needs some treatment after a certain point. Once you get beyond a basic system, you need some, but it's a double-edged sword because you need to be able to reproduce the lower frequencies. And unfortunately, they either excite most walls or they go right through the wall.
Mhm.
And then you've got the problem of keeping that, making it work. And so you start adding pillows everywhere and all the corners and the reflection points, and you think you're gaining something, but you may not be gaining something, in fact, because the low frequencies are still going right through the wall,
Yeah.
or they're bouncing off the wall and making the wall shake. So it's kind of like some is good if you have to live in normal construction and have your listening room in a normal construction um, environment, but it takes more than, it's a double-edged sword, and you need people that are more uh yeah, who are acousticians and know what they're doing. And when we built our systems, we have a close friendship with Bob Ludwig of Gateway Mastering, and he was building his room, and we got inspired and we said, well, we want to build one too. So we went ahead and we made the investment. It was well worthwhile for us. And manufacturers should have
Mhm.
a perfect room to design their products, or as perfect as they can. And it's not a dead room. It's a combination of using reflections and the size of the room and bass traps, etc., built into the walls. And it's that's not my business, but we've hired people to do it, and it works great.
How do you think we can get young people into the hobby so that high-end audio does not die when the boomers die?
Well, one of the things that that needs to happen is culturally, I think there's a great opportunity, because what I see in young people is they have a much wider, more eclectic view of music. And when I when I look at their iPhones and their music collections and things like that, they've got everything. They've got everything. They had the same passion for different types of music that I had when I was a kid. And it's because things are so much accessible and more available. I mean, I had to belong to the Columbia Record Club.
Hmm.
There was no record store in town. And now we can sit there and we can download 100, 200, 300 new music pieces a month
Hmm. Hmm.
instantly and have them instantly. So there's a lot more excitement about music. And I think the people who tend toward wanting a fuller experience will go there, just like people will continue to buy Ferraris who love cars, or buy whatever car they want. They may own a Hyundai now, but they want to have a Ferrari. So
Well, but that's an interesting analogy because people come to on Ferraris because they see them on the street. It's a visible thing that hits their radar. How do you
Mhm.
introduce people that love music, but they're listening to MP3s, they're listening to headphones? How do you introduce them to the concept of extraordinarily reproduced music, which is something they're just not going to see on the street like they see a Ferrari on the street?
Well, I think you've hit on something which is kind of important, is that we need to support retailers, good audio specialty retailers, because it's the only way you can have a good experience in a controlled environment. And they don't all have great sound rooms and they don't all do this, but if they will at least go to the trouble of going to your home and assessing what your listening situation is like. What have I got to work with for a room? And what have I got to work with in terms of what you can handle now and your list of long priorities of things you love to do? It's Dealers are very, very important because this is the only hobby, this is the only high-end pursuit that I know of that it comes in kit form, and you don't even have all the pieces to the kit in one place usually.
Right.
So it's very complicated, and I think that good dealers on a regional basis, not dealers on every corner hawking the latest and greatest, but dealers who genuinely care about the quality of your listening experience, to come into your home and help give you some guidance about where you should begin given the resources you have, is really invaluable. And so we've put a lot of effort into supporting dealers and developing dealers to spend the time with customers to create customers for life and help them to build the best system they possibly can given their situation.
What else would you like audiophiles to ponder regarding systems or music?
Well, I think the biggest issue is that because we've had to rely on an amateur press basically to do our bidding for us, is that the industry is very focused on, if it's bigger, it's better. If it's this is the thing I love this month, you've got to try it. And so what happens is customers don't, young people getting involved, they don't have any way to guide them to do something that is really satisfying unless they find a good dealer.
Hmm.
And we're very, or if they have a friend or they know people in the recording industry. I
Hmm.
mean, we've had good friends in the recording industry, and we've worked with dealers to help them be able to work with customers over the long term. And the people who are our dealers, they tend to be the people who want to do that anyway. They
Hmm.
feel it's their mission to
Hmm.
help customers get the best result possible. It's not universally the case, but it's
Right.
mostly the case.
Right. Karen, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been fun.
It has been fun. Thank you very much. And I just say to all your readers out there, I will be back, and I have a lot more to say about spatiality and scale of music, but I've held back because I'm not an acoustician, and I've been trying to find a way to put it on paper. It's in my mind. I just have to find a way to put it on
Well,
paper.
your essays have been widely loved and appreciated, so we would certainly love to see more of them.
Well, and I think I got a couple more in me, and all I can say is any of you are welcome to call us, and welcome to visit Maine in the summer and have some lobster and listen to some great music that you love in a wonderful setting.
That's
So
a wonderful invitation for people. Thank you.
yeah. So take care and thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen, very much. Bye bye.